first topic I want to discuss is just that's pretty interesting type of subject. It does, however, lay a foundation for future discussions on who we are as a church and what it is that God actually requires from us. The topic I want to focus on this evening is the upper room. If you are a seasoned Christian, your first thought when you hear of the upper room would be the birth of the church and the day the Holy Spirit was poured out on the disciples and thousands were added to the faith. So let's review the text and see if that doctrine holds true with what the Bible actually says. Let's start in Acts 1. Here we have Judas. He's just hung himself. We can only presume that the noose broke from the branch and his body fell down a cliff into a field. They called that cliff Akeldama, which is the field of blood, what it means in English. Now they were discussing his replacement. However, the main point I want to get from Acts 1 is verse 12. Then they returned to Jerusalem from the mount called Olivet, which is near Jerusalem, a Sabbath day journey away. So just to be clear, they were in Jerusalem. Now, Acts 2 is obviously the main text that we will focus on in order to understand the upper room / Pentecost theory. So let's start with Acts 2 verse 1. When the day of Pentecost arrived. This was clearly not the same day as it was in Acts 1. Acts 2 stipulates that this is another day, as it states when the day arrived. It had not yet arrived in Acts 1. It goes on to say they were all together in one place. And suddenly there came from heaven a sound like a mighty rushing wind, and it filled the entire house where they were sitting. I think the greatest confusion with regards to the upper room theory is the use of the word house. The word for house in Greek is oikos. It can mean home, household, or temple. Oikos happens to be the same word used in Matthew 21:13, Mark 11:17, Luke 19:46, John 2:16, Luke 11:51, Acts 7:47, and 49. All of these scriptures refer to the temple in Jerusalem as a house. Matthew, Mark, and Luke are detailing the account of when Jesus turns over the tables, and Jesus states, "My house shall be called a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of thieves." The house of prayer Jesus is referring to is obviously the temple whereby the money changers were. House in all of these contexts is the temple in Jerusalem. So let's go on to verse 3. And divided tongues as of fire appeared to them and rested on each one of them. And they were all filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in other tongues as the Spirit gave them utterance. Now there were dwelling in Jerusalem Jews, devout men from every nation under heaven. And at this sound the multitude came together, and they were bewildered, because each one was hearing them speak in his own language. So notice it says that at the sound the multitude came together. This would have been people in close proximity to each hear the sound and gather so quickly. Verse 7. And they were amazed and astonished, saying, Are not all these who are speaking Galileans? And how is it that we hear each of us in his own native language? He then goes on to name the regions where they're from. Verse 11. Both Jews and proselytes, Cretans and Arabians, we hear them telling in our own language the mighty works of God. And all were amazed and perplexed, saying to one another, What does this mean? But others mocking said, They are filled with new wine. So here we have a multitude of people from different nations. You see, it was customary for all Jews, regardless of where they stayed, to make a pilgrimage to Jerusalem in order to worship God and celebrate the Feast of Weeks, or Shavuot, as it is known in Hebrew. Every devout Jew would have followed the command of Deuteronomy 16:16 and Leviticus 23 and present themselves at the temple in Jerusalem in order to worship God. So let's go on to verse 14. But Peter, standing with the 11, lifted up his voice and addressed them. Men of Judea and all who dwell in Jerusalem, let this be known to you and give ear to my words. For these people are not drunk, as you suppose, since it is only the 3rd hour of the day. So here we see it is 9 in the morning. It is the custom for every Jew to be at the temple at 9 in the morning, as they had to gather early in prayer and present themselves to the Lord on Shavuot. Let's read Deuteronomy 16:16. 3 times a year, all your men must appear before the Lord your God at the place he will choose. At the festival of unleavened bread, the festival of weeks, which is Shavuot, and the festival of tabernacles. No one should appear before the Lord empty-handed. The place that God would choose is obviously the temple in Jerusalem while it still existed. Leviticus 21 says Shavuot shall be a holy convocation. Convocation means to have an assembly of people. Again, this would be a command to have a holy convocation of all Jews at the temple in Jerusalem on Shavuot, as all feasts and festivals included the need to read and learn God's laws, which was conducted from the temple. Let's go into verse 16. Verse 16 is Peter's first sermon whereby he preached with the power of the Holy Spirit. So then let's forward to verse 41. So those who received his word were baptized, and there were added that day about 3,000 souls. So 3,000 is a fair amount of people. I mean, you're not just going to get 3,000 people gathering off the streets on a high Sabbath. On Sabbaths, if you weren't at the temple, you were at home. It was a day of rest, and apart from presenting yourself to God at the temple in the morning, you would be at home resting. So there must have been a mass gathering of people at a specific place, and this would have had to be at the temple, as that is where every Jew would have been at 9 in the morning on Shavuot. You see, all this evidence points to the same conclusion. The pouring out of the Spirit reported in Acts 2 took place in the courts of the temple in Jerusalem, and not in the upper room as mentioned in Acts 1. So what does this mean? Is there any significance? As a church, we seem to think that we are God's plan B. As plan A didn't quite work out, and even worse, some think that God set up plan A so that we could actually utterly fail and then change his everlasting covenants in order to facilitate plan B. The truth, though, is we are still God's plan A. God didn't start a new thing, quite the opposite. He reaffirmed his plan A to Israel by pouring out his Spirit at the temple in Jerusalem, as he said he would in Ezekiel 36:26. And I will give you a new heart, and a new spirit I will put within you. And I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. And I will put my Spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes and be careful to obey my rules. You shall dwell in the land that I gave to your fathers, and you shall be my people, and I will be your God. You see, this is the new covenant. God's pouring out his Spirit so we can be the holy nation that he intended from the beginning. We are the citizenship of Israel. That is why both Exodus 19:6 and 1 Peter 2:9 speak of us as the same holy nation. But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. So that concludes our topic on the upper room. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will be releasing new videos every week to discuss specifically things that we thought we knew, but in closer examination we realized that perhaps it isn't 100% true. So stay blessed, guys. Shalom.